Welcome back, y'all, to the podcast Under Your Bed. Today we have Suspiria 1977. But before we get there, your hostess Taylor sitting across from me, y'all. I'm your co-host CJ. Suspiria is about a young American woman that moves to Germany to attend a prestigious dance academy, which is run by a sort of suspicious group of women that may or may not be murdering people.
Yeah,
we'll see. We'll find out. Spookiness ensues. Tell me, what should people know, Taylor, going into this movie?
Okay, guys, this is an all-time classic, which took me a very, very long time in my life to see. Do not make that mistake. Go ahead and see it earlier than I did. It is a wild trip. I don't even know. It's a technicolor, unhinged nightmare filled with the craziest soundtrack I've ever heard. And I'm super stoked for us to get into this one, especially considering that prior to this, CJ had accidentally watched the new one, so this is going to be
Don't judge me.
Super interesting to talk a little bit about both of those and whatever, but kicking us off kind of cast-wise, it is one of those situations where it's probably a little bit lesser known. There's a few bigger actors in it who have some really exciting credits, but overall, a lot of the actresses were from literally all over the place. Some were German, I believe some were Russian, some were Italian, some were American, and everything got dubbed over in the end, which is so bizarre. I'm not really sure about that choice. It probably ages it. Even more than it already is. But so I'm just going to kind of give the bigger highlights because, again, I don't think most of us will be familiar with most of the cast. But kicking us off, our American protagonist is Susie Bannion, played by Jessica Harper. I know her best from Phantom of the Paradise. If you have not seen that movie, I fucking love it. It is dope. Please watch it. But she's also still kicking around, doing Bones and All, did the Minority Report back in the 00s. And then it's going to start to get a little bit people we don't know so much. So then you get Sarah's kind of like her BFF. Stefania Cassini, she was in Barbed Wire. You got Daniel who's the pianist, the blind pianist in this. Flavio, oh boy, Bucci? How would you say that? Bucci. Well, I like it. Yeah. C-A. We'll just do a little bit of that works. And I might just give some character names. So Mark is kind of the handyman. Pat is our first gal oft. We've got a few different professors and doctors in this. Really the two big ones that I know from this, Miss Tanner, who is the kind of dance instructor in this. I'm going to butcher her name, which is a real bummer. She is German.
Alida Valli.
Okay. All right. We'll go with that. So she has some amazing credits. She's in Eyes Without a Face, which I freaking love. She's in The Third Man, guys. Like, if you've not seen The Third Man, please do yourself a favor. This is royalty in my eyes. Like, amazing that she's in this. Almost unrecognizable compared to those other films because they're obviously a bit older. And Madame Blanc, who is kind of I'd say she's right under the head. She's above the instructor, though. Yeah, she's looking hot for that age. I'm just gonna throw it out there. So you got Joan Bennett, who was in the OG Little Women. She was in The Woman in the Window. She was in the Dark Shadows TV show for multiple episodes. So that's kind of our bigger players. And again, it's kind of limited, like for credit-wise on people I know. Yeah. Apologies if you know someone in this that you just love and I missed it. I'm just not familiar. But the crew, I think there's a few names as well that are familiar.
Yeah, look, we won't judge because I didn't know any of these people. You know, have somewhere once upon a time seen Jessica Harper. I honestly couldn't place her. But same with crew, a little less familiar with this, but directed by Dario Argento. Argento.
Like the cheese.
Obviously. I'm not enough of a cheese either, apparently. Doing movies like Opera, Deep Red, Inferno, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. And then one of those like classic stories of a crew that just sticks together, love working together.
Yes.
So this was written by Argento and then also Daria Nicolati, edited by Franci Fraticelli. Again, part of that like core group that went on to make a bunch of movies.
Same movies, yeah.
Composition by Goblin, which is this like sweet Italian prog rock band that like really sent it in this movie, which was super dope. And I guess Argento got involved a little bit.
They like worked together on this to coordinate, and they had the score done like where they were playing it while filming, which is the coolest thing ever, I think.
Yeah, which I think is really great when the actors can hear what the score is going to be. It really sets the tone in a lot of ways, right? Cinematography by Luciano Tovoli, which I think was great. Effects, Germano Natali. Production design, Giuseppe Bassan. Honestly, I thought this was a top-notch crew. They really crushed it in a lot of ways. If I were to like hate on this film a little bit, my qualms with it come from like story, but this is a flick that has some intense violence, has a lot of horrific scenes, but like the storytelling was maybe not entirely there in some ways, but just really sent it full speed in like their cinematography choices, some, like set design and color choices. So I'm just super curious what your thoughts are, Taylor.
Oh my God, I had such a good time watching this movie. It was one of those ones that, I just heard people talking about for such a long time. And for some reason, it just kept getting pushed on the back of my list because, shit comes up and then you want to watch the newer thing, whatever. So it kind of got lost to me for a while. And I also ended up watching the remake first, but I had a good amount of years in between seeing the two films. I loved this. I had such a blast. It's such a trip. That's the best way I can describe it. Between the music, the color scheme going on, the set design with that crazy Art Deco vibe, how ridiculous and over the top the gore is, where it's that really, really excessively bright red blood that is not in any human's body. I had so much fun with that, and just found myself laughing and enjoying myself the whole time.
Yeah, that's interesting. Definitely some of the gore was, maybe dated, so it gives it this kind of funny quality. But honestly, I would be willing to guess that sort of the technicolor like brightness of this flick, like they haven't maybe quite solved the like blood coloring choices, which maybe I'm off. The whole film is like very intentionally like has these bright, vibrant colors throughout. So maybe they just really wanted a bright, vibrant red instead of something that's realistic. That would totally make sense. But
it's very giallo. Like that's kind of the vibe. When you watch a lot of those movies, the gore is excessively over the top, but it never feels real because it never really looks quite real. Like even there's some parts in this where you get some like exposed organ, let's say, and that part doesn't look bad, but the coloring is so over the top that it kind of takes you out of anything that feels remotely real.
Right. And, Argento he was kind of talking about the film and saying that he wanted to feel like an acid trip.
It does. It does.
I mean, there are moments in the film where like the decor and the wallpaper is so like visually stimulating.
Oh yeah,
it does feel that way. And you have these bright colors, these geometric patterns that are just overwhelming to the eye, and kind of creates this like, in his words, like this expressionistic fairy tale, which makes a lot of sense. I think its strengths were in tone, atmosphere, and just fun gore violence,
Oh, totally. And to your point, I think like where my biggest complaints would probably be in similar arenas. To your point, like, it's not much of a story, to be honest. There isn't a huge character arc or development, I should say. There's an arc. There's just not much development.
What's the arc? I'm scared.
No, you're right. It's a fair criticism.
Try to survive.
It's a fair criticism. Yeah, she doesn't have to overcome looming obstacles other than like a witch cult trying to go after her, which, that's intense.
Or any internal conflict, it doesn't, it's pretty absent.
No, not much there. But I just feel like this style, atmosphere, soundtrack, cinematography make up for some of the weaker points to me, where it will definitely be something I continue to rewatch and pick up on how again, it's so insanely bizarre. The patterns are so crazy, especially that opening scene, which we will absolutely deep dive after this bit, because that first scene is wild. That is an epic opening to a movie. Yeah. That is so good. I have no complaints on the opening.
Yeah, it really it went on to inspire lots of other filmmakers that kind of used that influence within their work. I know The Grudge being one that comes to mind, like very overtly homages this film. And it's really like oozing with style in a lot of ways, just really strong sense of style all the way from the graphics to the color, which, was this like really the backbone of this project, I would say. So really curious for all y'all's thoughts out there.
Yeah.
Taylor, let's get to some ratings. Let's start with scare. Maybe that's an easier one here. All right. Out of 4 monsters under the bed, how scary are you rating this?
Man, that's a tough one, because it feels like something this gory shouldn't be that low. And it's hard because it is a product of its time. Like you said, it's a 77 production. The dubbing definitely hinders probably some of the atmosphere that would have been built if you weren't so distracted by something like that. And to your point, there isn't a huge story or character arc where, that tends to get me very invested and freaked out via like a Hereditary thing, where I'm so engrossed in these characters that I am more scared of what's happening, where I don't think that connection is quite there. I don't know. It feels really weird to give this one a 1. It's just probably not something I'm going to think about afterward, but that feels wrong somehow. I'm sorry. That feels weird to say a 1, but I don't have a justification for it too. How about you?
Ouch. I just thought it was so like excessively violent at times that it has to at least be a 2. For that alone, there were some like hokey moments that took me out, and there's no like lingering, haunting feeling to this. So
creepy shots, creepy shots. You're right. There are some very creepy shots in it.
I'll give it a solid 2 in terms of 2 monsters out of scariness under the bed. Now, the Grande, whatever the song is, how out of 4 stars, how many stars are you rating this?
I have a feeling we're gonna differ on this one, which will be interesting. You know what? I'm going to give this one a 3. It probably should be a 2, but I really enjoyed it. I had such a good time watching this movie, and doing rewatches for this, I never found myself bored or annoyed that I was rewatching it to like get all my ducks in a row for this. So I think that says a lot to how entertaining it is. It is well made. Whether, I get the story is definitely lacking. Character development definitely lacking. But aside from that, I think it's very strong production wise. Again, that soundtrack kicks ass. Actually, the soundtrack alone to me gives it the 3, and everything else is just a sweet little dusting on top. But I'm gonna give it a solid 3. I had so much fun. How about you?
This is a rare occasion. I'm giving it a 2.
It's so funny. You went higher with the horror. I went down. You went lower with the rating. I went up.
It's who knows. Honestly, because at the end of the day, story. Like,
sure,
if it ain't there, there's only so far I can allow the movie to go. And there were just these hokey moments throughout, whether it's because it's dated poorly, but I don't quite think so. Some of them are just like kind of hokey choices. We'll get to them in the spoiler section.
I'm really needing to hear this, but I'm excited to hear this.
Come on. Do they not jump out to you?
No, I have guesses, but I don't know. So I'm actually really excited.
All right. So just some of the choices along the way as part of it. But it is a very, very solid 2 because they did make some very strong stylistic choices that I love. They really leaned in and said,
all the way,
we are not going to be afraid to like make the movie we want to make, which I love. But also I just felt like there was so much room for growth, which I think the remake got.
Oh, you're going to make so many enemies in this. This is great. This is great. CJ is going to burn all of our bridges in this one, and what remains I will burn when we do The Shining. So this is perfect. Good for us.
Exactly. Hey, it's okay to have a difference of opinion. So, y'all, I'm excited to get to the spoiler section.
Yeah.
Stick around. We have a pretty interesting drink. A lot of good things going on with it. Just like this movie. Love, hate, up to you. But we're looking forward to getting to it.
Welcome to the podcast Under Your Bed. There'll be drinks, critique, and perhaps a few murders. You're all invited, but once the podcast has begun, there's no way out. The ghosts are waiting, so won't you join me for the podcast Under Your Bed?
What do we do for a scream on this one? There's not a lot of screaming in this one, which is shocking because even the girl stabbed in the heart just goes, there. That's it.
That's a good point. I think we go, this bundle of wires is all over me, which clearly doesn't have any barbs.
Oh my God,
on it.
I know it's such a bad part because you're like, this would be so scary if it were for the fact that you could see literally any part of the...
If it was for the fact that she could just, with one finger, keep the latch down on the door and not have to worry about jumping into a pile of barbed wire, which is clearly below her before she jumps in.
She goes. She just... She goes. It doesn't matter. Yeah, she apparently though some of those wires really were like constricting, so she was like kind of she was starting to panic like while filming it, being like, "Holy shit,
wow.
These are like digging in, but they're not obviously barbed, but it was like really cutting into her skin while she was filming."
I buy it. I mean, that was a deep ball pit of hell. If you've ever been trapped at McDonald's before as a child, raising my hand over here. All right. Well, fuck a scream. Y'all don't get one. This was scary enough to.
I like it. That conversation just works. That works. We'll go with that.
We're cold opening this one, y'all.
I guess so.
All right, Taylor. We said it in the beginning, but story is a good place to start, as always.
Our drink.
After our drink is what I was saying, and you cut me off so rudely.
I am so sorry.
Of course, Taylor.
Yes,
hit me with some drink.
All
and
right.
then we'll get to our summary review.
So, like I said, Carver hinted at, I made a mistake. And guys, always check your produce. That's a lesson I learned today. I thought I had everything and then realized I didn't. But I made this drink before, so I can vouch for it authentically. I've drank it twice now.
Maggots in it.
Oh, God, don't. That actually was a scene where I was like, I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. In the hair. That's not right. Anyway, so this one is the Marcos by our friends Shaken Not Scared podcast. They did our Black Christmas cocktail. Again. That was, I hate to say I did like the Black Christmas cocktail better than this one, but This still has, as you noted, some really great stuff going. So this one specifically calls for the gorgeous Empress Gin because, if you're looking for a fancy way to impress people, Empress Gin, purple gin, it's a hit with everybody. We got lemon juice. It's so good. Lemon juice, elderflower liqueur. This is where it gets a little funky I'll give you the good ones first. Champagne, cucumber, mint. To me, that all works. I think where I struggled a little bit with the drink was the little bit of blue curacao and the little bit of vodka and grenadine. I think it throws the flavor profile off just a little bit for myself, but it's genuinely not a difficult drink to make. It looks really pretty, and I respect them trying to get the color coordinating via the movie, so I totally get it. I think this one is kind of in the middle road for both of us. It seemed like okay, but not maybe our top tier.
Yeah. Completely agreed. I love some gin. I love some champagne to kind of open it up and soften it in a way, give it that bubble. I think it's a lot of fun. And the fresh flavors, again, with the gin,
lemon
cucumber,
juice,
mint,
all that.
They're really punching you in the face with it. But I don't skip the grenadine. I don't think you need it. But again, I err on the less sweet, more dry side.
Totally. That's on this podcast. We're always gonna say more booze, less sweets, pretty much consistently.
Yeah. Please and thank you.
Still worth a try though, and I would maybe recommend without the 3 ingredients I listed. I think you're gonna have a really nice cocktail that still looks pretty. It's just not going to have the whole layering Marcos full effect. So, use at your discretion.
Yeah. Which, it's going to end up turning into some sort of purplish color anyways, because once you take a sip, the colors bleed. Sure. There you go. Yeah. But it is fun serving that split color.
Oh, yeah.
But y'all, let's get to this deep dive critique right after a quick summary review to bring you all up to speed. We open on American ballet student Susie arriving in Germany on the stormiest night possible.
It's crazy out there.
Susie makes her way to Tanz Dance Academy. Tanz if you're American. Tanz Dance Academy. Only to find herself locked out. They can't open the door. And a distraught young woman named Patricia fleeing the building. Pat takes refuge at her friend Sonia's apartment, but is attacked and killed after someone repeatedly stabs her and tosses her on the building's skylight. Pat's body eventually falls through the skylight, causing it to shatter, the pieces of which impale and kill Sonia. Oh,
just tried to help her friend. Kind of shitty.
Collateral damage.
Yeah.
Susie arrives back at the school the next day and meets the head instructor, Miss Tanner, headmistress, Madame Blanc, handyman, Pavlos, and a friendly classmate named Sarah. During her first day of classes, Susie runs into Madame Blanc's creepy little nephew, Albert.
Ew, it's just a weird little painting from 18. I hate it.
He's a little Mein Kampf Hitler Youth over there.
Yes.
And a school matron, we can get to later, and a school matron who flashes an object at her, causing her to immediately become nauseous and faint and eventually pass out. I went vampire there for some reason.
Yeah,
Susie awakens and is told she must engage in a specific diet, which includes a glass of red wine. And that evening, maggots rain down on the school inhabitants due to boxes of spoiled food in the attic. The infestation forces the students to room together in the practice hall. Sarah notices a shadowy figure creepily snoring in the hall and surmises to Susie it is likely the secretive and rarely seen directress, Helena Marcos. The next day, the school's piano player Daniel is fired after Miss Tanner accuses his seeing eye dog of biting Albert.
Good for that dog.
That evening, amen, Sarah and Susie realize the headmistress seems to disappear. The headmistresses, all of them, seem to disappear, but do not leave the building each night. Sarah wants to investigate this further, but Susie finds herself suspiciously unable to stay awake. We then cut to Daniel, who is stalked by an unseen force and is abruptly attacked by his seeing eye dog, who rips his throat, kills him, starts eating his innards.
Bummer.
Susie and Sarah continue to discuss concerns in the wake of Daniel's death, and Sarah admits she is the one who turned Susie away on the night she arrived. Sarah states she has notes Pat had been collecting on the bizarre going on in the school. Later, Sarah finds the notes stolen and is unable to awake Susie. While attempting to flee from an attacker, Sarah falls into a room of razor wire, unable to escape. The killer slits her throat. Susie is informed the next morning that Sarah left the academy, quote unquote. Knowing this is some baloney, Susie meets with Sarah's friend, Frank. Frank tells Susie Sarah was fixated on the story of Helena Marcos, a suspected witch who founded the Tan's Academy and supposedly died in a fire in 1895. Susie additionally speaks to Professor Millis, who explains witches often operate in covens and use their powers to harm others to gain personal wealth. Millis also states that killing the head witch would render the coven powerless, which is a very difficult decision to make in the moment.
Foreshadowing.
When Susie arrives back to the school, she finds all the students have left for a show, leaving just her and the staff. Susie dumps her food and wine and elects to explore the footsteps she has been hearing. Susie finds the footsteps stopped in Madame Blanc's office. Susie notices a wall with irises adorning it, and better recalls that Pat said her first night leading her to turn the iris, revealing a secret corridor.
Secret corridor.
Into the basement of hell.
I don't know where it is, yeah.
Susie then hears the instructors discussing murdering her.
Fun.
As they do. Susie happens upon Sarah's corpses and is chased into Helena Marcos's room by Pavlos. Marcos turns herself invisible, like a good witch should, and sends Sarah's reanimated corpse to kill Susie. Susie catches a brief glimpse of Marcos and uses the moment to stab and kill her. Sarah disappears and the building begins to crumble, with everyone in the coven suffering brutal deaths. What am I trying to say? Mm-hmm. Susie, the only one able to escape the now burning building, smiles triumphantly.
She did it.
Okay, the smiling. we're gonna start at the end, not the beginning. Was interesting. Only if you've seen the new movie.
It's so different though. This whole
because the smile threw me
is
off.
different.
Yes, you can assume that she's just happy that she's not dead, that she escaped, but it's also kind of a strange reaction to smile after like nearly being like massacred.
I don't know, man. I would be like, these people put me through the fucking ringer. Fuck them. Like, they are the worst. Yeah. They've murdered her friends.
Are you smiling when you're saying "fuck you"? You know, I
don't know. I would.
At the very least, I think it's inspiration for the remake. That
okay.
Why is she smiling at the end? Maybe there's underlying motive that she is pleased that she had this mission to. Well, this is spoilers for a new movie, but fuck
just
it.
Spoil it. Whatever. It's several years old at this point. I think it's okay.
You know, that her whole mission is to like go in and, roost out these witches.
But she's like the Susie in the new one. It becomes like the head witch to like cut out the rot in the coven, let's say, where Susie in this one
imposter.
is more of a victim who's happened into this situation, where the other one, there's like a full on backstory of intention as to why she ended up there and why, so to your point of the story bit. Yeah, there's a lot more motivation in the new one compared to obviously this one.
Honestly, it was part of what was keeping me going, and the original was out
because it's so long.
I'd seen the remake. Well, no, because I saw the remake first. I was thinking like, I'm saying it kept me going in the original movie because I was like, oh, when is it going to get revealed that she is a double agent, that she's a secret witch and infiltrating them, and it never did. And so I was like, oh, wait, what? This is like, she's just this chick bouncing around in the wind trying to survive with no story arc whatsoever.
That is more authentic to what you get in most horror movies. Most horror movies are somebody, especially a female.
Shitty horror movies.
Not most shitty. Even good ones get put into these circumstances where they're the outsider in this situation. To your reference of like thinking about The Grudge and stuff, you have this American who is very much already an outsider, just having the language barrier and not being as culturally aware. Then you have them put in this situation that they're like, what in the F, trying to investigate the situation and then coming out victorious. I think you see that thematically in a lot of movies like that aren't just shitty movies. I think you see that in a lot of movies.
Okay, fair.
But
now,
you did see one that had more of a character development, so I'm not going to begrudge you on that because you did see a more fleshed out version of that story that had a little bit more motivation. Okay, it had a lot more motivation to it.
Right, like, yeah. So, I mean, let's critique the movie based on its own merits. Yes. So, there was no backstory to these witches. There was no apparent motivation to the witches.
Minor backstory. Well, that one scene technically does it.
The whole exposition dump with the psychiatrist?
Yes.
Great. That's quality screenwriting. And then there is no like character arc with our final girl. It's just what's happening here. I'm suspicious of things, and then she goes creeping around and has to escape. Like that's the story. I don't know. I thought there was just room for growth, at least in the story element. What I will say, I thought did come across in the story was the clear like themes of like fascism, in terms of, this like domineering, authoritative group that controlled elements of these people's lives. And, force them to eat certain things, and you have to show up in a certain place at a certain time, and then just killed people at will, depending on who they just thought should die. And also the sort of like cat fighting that went on, and like ostracizing the new people, the outsiders, the others. And I think this is like made very overt when the dog kills the blind guy, where Hitler literally would have his like most iconic like rallies and speeches, right?
That is so wild to me that is where they filmed. And then apparently this was a very like, they used a lot of like Fritz Lang kind of vibes, and he was very The Third Man is a Fritz Lang film, so there's the connection there. And again, if you've not seen The Third Man, I cannot recommend that enough. It is so fucking good. But Fritz Lang films typically have it's not even like covert, it's very overt, like Nazis are bad. Like that's really, which is understandable given the circumstances that he was dealing with. Makes sense. But I find that piece of little history just wild to me that they filmed it there, and that it's it weirdly feels very off-putting and scary and very open, and just the structure of that area feels very domineering, which is weird to say of architecture, but like it just feels that way.
Absolutely. Like grandiose in a very ominous way. And it does like belittle, that character in the moment where he's just isolated, alone, vulnerable. So again, it's like those atmospheric tonal qualities that I thought the movie was successful in. And that is achieved in set design, cinematography, and score and soundscape.
Man, I don't even know where to start with there. And quick correction, I just realized the third man is not Fritz Lang, but that's fine. It doesn't matter. He did a ton of anti-Nazi films, so I got myself confused for a second. Doesn't matter. Anyways.
Hey, say it with conviction, right? That's all that counts.
That's all that matters. Don't worry. Don't correct yourself. No, you should always. But, man, where to start? Okay, I think a fun place to start is just the Goblin soundtrack because, oh my God, what a good time is that soundtrack. And I have heard people say for years and years and years and years, oh, that soundtrack's so great. And, you know, when it first started, it's so overwhelming because it is loud. It is there. But I found myself, as I was going through it, enjoying it more and more. And then I started just playing it, not while watching the movie. And I realized that I became very much in love with it. But you
got hexed.
I did. I got hexed. And I mean, there's literally weird whispers in there. So like, I don't know, maybe they had that backwards loop thing going. No, I'm just kidding. But it's so interesting to have a film that's so motivated by soundtrack. And it's such a star player in this movie that if you did not have this soundtrack, I genuinely don't know how this would have landed without that soundtrack.
Yes. So many times it's working really, really well. Now, there's also some like really interesting choices that at first I wasn't sure of.
Sure. Same.
There's like almost these like Christmas bells at times.
Yes. Yes, there are bells. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a Christmas jingle almost, but with a haunting, horrific twist.
Tone. Yeah.
I don't know how it's described. And then there's also these like hints of like Asian or like Middle Eastern like cultural instruments coming out, which like I wasn't sure of at first, but I think we're sort of going back to like ancient religion in a sense of, you know, what a coven of witches perhaps would evoke. And, you know, so at least that's my excuse for it. Now, something that I wasn't sure worked well or not was like this, like shouting of witch throughout the movie. I thought it was fun, very strong stylistic choice, but I was like, maybe I'm jaded because I watched the new one first, but I was like,
Thomas York on the new one. Yeah.
I thought they were literally telling us she's a witch, you know. Well,
and then of course
it doesn't. But
I don't think they're leaving that
saying,
to the imagination. To be fair, even from the beginning, I don't think it's a huge mystery, really. But yeah.
Well, right. No, I mean that's the thing. Is like it could have been like a little more of this like growing like discovery. The audience could have discovered this coven of witches as opposed to being told. You know, like there were just a few moments throughout the film that it kind of felt hokey. Like, did you not feel that way ever? Like,
was it the music that made you feel that way, or like what part? Yeah, sorry, you were getting there. The end.
Well, no, just specifically saying witch. You know, like if I thought at the end they could have like gone that like overt in your face with the score, soundscape, whatever. Now all the whisper stuff, I
love the whispers.
Voices,
I love the whispers.
Awesome. Like it's 99% of this score soundscape was phenomenal.
I'll take that. I'll take 99%.
It was the like just the witch thing that I was like, what? But it was so in your face, like punching you, that I was like, what's happening?
I don't think I caught it. I don't think I overtly heard witch. I was like, what the fuck did he just say? And then I think it took me like another
20 times in the first 15 minutes. Like, witch. Like,
but it's really whispery. It's really in there.
No,
you got that big rain in the back. I was also confused, like Susie. I could not hear everything that was going on. Okay.
All right. In like around the time you first hear it, near the opening, taxi is driving through the woods. First of all, cinematography, beautiful.
Also, though, why didn't they pick her up? That's fucking insane. If I saw a woman running in the woods, I'd be like, are you all right?
You ever been in New York? You wave your hand for 10 minutes and they all are full. They're already full.
And on a night like that rainy, no one's picking your ass up.
No one's picking your ass up. They're trying to go home, go to bed. But then you see the shadow on the tree of the sickle.
Yeah.
Or whatever knife. What are we doing? Why you do that?
I was so thrown by just the colors, the excessive rain, the whatever, that honestly, I don't even think I caught some of that stuff, at least the first time I watched it, because I was like, what is going on? Where are we? What is the story? Why is she being turned away? Why is this gal running in the woods? And then we enter right into it, and I feel like we just have to talk about this opening scene, because then we enter into the wildest opening. Honestly, flabbergasted. Even the outside of that building, the Art Deco style of that, and then you get to the inside, and it's just the craziest building I've ever seen, paired with these insane random visuals of the eyes popping out, then the big hairy arm, her face being pressed up against that glass actually was very stressful to me. That part actually really stressed me out. I wasn't sure if her face was gonna just get caught up or what was gonna happen there. But man, that scene is wild. I mean, what was your moving from that crazy wooded thing to that? What was kind of your feeling?
This is that witch's brew where I love parts and hated parts. It was that acid trip feel. Yeah. Right? With the set design, the art and stuff. But that the skylight. All right. My first note was I really love the laundry outside reflecting.
Oh, yeah.
You see
that was
woman's
cool.
face reflecting in the glass, and it almost looks like this veil over her face, she's mourning or dead already or something, right? And so I thought that was working beautifully. And then you get this close up of these glowing yellow eyes, and I was like, God damn it, why did they do that? But then immediately followed by this crash of the arm through. Now, the arm itself was,
it was patchy. I think we can both say it. It was a patchy arm job. That wasn't great hair placement on that situation.
The surprise element was great. And then the pressed against the glass was amazing.
It looked so painful. It looked so painful.
Very violent. And then jump to some new location a mile away.
Okay, that was very confusing. I was actually going to ask you. It's
why are we in some industrial place?
I don't know. She's outside all of a sudden.
Die Hard or something. I don't.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my God. You're right. It literally is the roof. It is either the rooftop of Die Hard or the unfinished floor of Die Hard. It's so confusing. It is weird. She's inside, then she's outside, but then you can't even focus on how bizarre that is. Because then you move right into her getting stabbed so viciously.
Yeah. It's for every time they do something irate or just erratic, it's immediately followed by greatness. Yeah. So you kind of you kind of suspended disbelief in those things, right?
I did, yeah, for sure. I had to let that go.
All right, but you're the biggest fan. I'm also a fan. Tell us about that death. That first death was so good.
Man, so you get, first off, it feels really brutal, and there is something even more haunting to me about someone who's not screaming that when a violent attack is happening, that feels kind of more scary and more real to me. But you get those violent stabs, and then you get that opening shot, or you get that shot where the chest cavity is fully open into the heart, and the stab into the heart is so brutal. Like we said at the beginning, the gore is it's very, very technicolor looking even in that scene, but it's so brutal. And to see the actual heart get stabbed that's beating and then wrapped around and chucked over that skylight, it is so wild. It's pretty, it's disgusting, it's so cool. I don't know how else to describe that. But then she goes through the skylight, all the pieces fall down, and then you see that her friend has been cut in the face, cut in the right through the throat, in the chest. It's just wild opening.
It's kind of like ritualistic, right?
Yes.
Like the way they're dead on the floor with the geometric shapes and
so stylized,
and like in these like very posed ways. It does like it kind of looks
like a Renaissance painting of a fucked up sort.
Yeah, for sure. Leaning into that style, of course, like you cannot talk about this film without talking about the color.
Oh my God.
Now, I'm mixed on it. I didn't entirely understand it. I would like to hear your thoughts on like what was going on. It was definitely serving this like acid trip feeling of this like, very like vivid, aggressive, I don't know. What was it doing for you?
Acid trip fairy tale. That is the vibe that those colors elicit. I mean, it's like you bought a whole string of Christmas lights and you had one setting into different rooms, and you're either getting these crazy reds, these crazy blues. I think there's a mixture of kind of greeny at some point, but it's typically the red and the blue that are the most striking of it. And I've seen a couple articles about it being like thematically linked, like to, obviously we think of red, we think of danger, we think of death. But I will say that especially with the chase with Sarah, that does change throughout her individual chase. So I don't think that completely holds water in terms of like theory that it's specific to color, what's happening in the story. Yeah. I will say when it worked though, it looks so fucking cool. It felt so otherworldly and bizarre, and just, again, a neon nightmare situation that you don't really expect to see that kind of color situation. It was like a Wizard of Oz went to hell is kind of what it feels like when she lands in Munchkin Land. That's kind of the vibe that I get from it. But I do understand where people have criticisms of it. It is extremely over stylized. To me, it works, but I could see where somebody would have an issue with it. And just giving, again, a mild comparison to the new one color wise is much more subdued, much more reality based. This is completely the opposite of that. So they went in entirely different directions style wise, which, to be fair, if you're going to do a remake, probably a good choice.
Yeah. I just couldn't find a pattern to it.
Sure, yeah.
And I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I think it's okay to have style for style's sake, without a necessary rhyme or reason. It was captivating. It set a mood. And I really liked how playful they were with the movement of light as well. There were moments where a scene would be, if I'm recalling correctly, like almost like all green. I'm thinking of that, like there's a bedroom scene, and then bedroom door opens, and now it's like slashed in half, like green.
Yeah.
And then characters being like washed in red or backlit by a green or a blue, and then amped up with these extremely vibrant like velvet wallpapers, like velvet blue, velvet red. It felt like sort of an Alice down the rabbit hole
And that's
movie.
the vibe he was going for. So that's exactly it. And I do think too, it is interesting because like, again, like I said, the newer one goes for much more neutral, much more reality based tones. But I think like a lot of things I read were saying, this is so contradictory to what a horror movie typically is. Typically speaking, aside from us talking about like Midsommar, which was bathed fully in light, what you get in a horror movie is very dark colors, very subdued lighting. Like that's the mood, the tone, whatever. Man, if you go to the early 2000s, those blue hues, I can't even handle it. That was so bad. So many movies, so bad. This is the opposite. Everything is bright and shiny and crazy. And then you have just these super gory, violent scenes contrasted against these crazy, huge blue lights or crazy, huge red lights. And I think that is pretty interesting to make such a bold stylistic choice.
Yeah. And then a lot of play with like shadows, right?
Oh,
there's kind
totally.
of iconic shots of like, there's like a dolly movement down a hallway. You see like the shadow appear first and then the actress moves into frame, which is kind of really nice and did create a very like scary atmosphere.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny, read, in some trivia that, the color was inspired by Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the like
that's
original
fitting.
animated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? And if you go and watch it, like, at least if you see a few stills or something, like it's very obvious. Like, if you think back to like the clothing in the dwarves, they're like those kind of muted, red, green, yellow, blue, like outfits that they wear, and like characters like a psychiatrist in particular jumps to mind, where he's got this like green suit on that feels like almost out of place, but looks like kind of like a dopey character or something, whoever it's supposed to, I thought it was really funny, but definitely could see it. And especially like, I mean, I like the witch in Snow White. It's a witch, right? Like, right. So, it's kind of interesting that it's like this folk tale, come to life, and that there's a lot of, almost like historic fairy tale qualities to it that strike a chord, I think, in pop culture when you're expanding upon, a legacy.
Oh no, I can totally see that. And it does have that. I mean, that was kind of his idea, is to do this kind of fairy tale vibe. And something that was really interesting to me is originally he wanted this to be a much younger cast, but you're talking about Argento gore, which is like all the way top tier gore. So unsurprisingly, studios were like, there's no fucking way you're getting kids involved in this. It is not going to happen. So he obviously then had to kind of pivot, but he didn't really pivot in terms of set design and story. So it does still have this very, like, all of the doors and stuff, all the knobs are like slightly higher, like as if a kid was trying to reach, and it's just like a little higher than like what you would expect.
An interesting choice.
Yeah, and same with like windows and all the other stuff, and the way he frames all the actors, and all the actors do, at least the dancers, have like a very youthful look to them, and they do feel quite small in these big elaborate sets that are going on. So that is really cool to me, that it does have this kind of fairy tale vibe, but it's the darkest version of a fairy tale you could anticipate.
That is for sure. Now, I would love to see director's original vision of this with children. Because to your point, there's like, the story kind of makes more sense when you're dealing with like this naive kid that's just like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm going to just explore, and things just kind of happen to kids, right? As opposed to like driving, like kids kind of like have less choice in a way. Right. So it kind of does make sense. And, also that like naivety of of a child. Like,
well, they act like kids too. Like they're literally
do,
in
right.
fights like
Sticking their
children would
tongues
get.
out.
Yeah,
I wrote down
Yeah.
like it was one of those things that I was just like, what the fuck is going on?
Because
Like,
he
why?
wasn't diverting from the plan. He was not diverting from his plan. Doesn't matter
Which
what.
is, I mean, when a choice like changing the age by a decade happens, you might need to consider some like screenplay rewrites here. But
I don't know, man. You clearly didn't deal with dancers because they're like some next level. Don't come for me, dancers. They're clearly like some next level situations there that feel very juvenile sometimes. But
fair enough.
probably because I danced as a juvenile, but still.
All right. Well, you know, I think at the end of the day, it was intriguing enough to keep me watching, and it was definitely a source of inspiration to draw from. There's so much creativity put into this that you can't say doesn't exist. So
No, and I do have to, before we start rounding up our last minute things, have to ask favorite character death, and I feel like I should already know the answer, but I just have to double check.
I'm kind of double checking myself, but yeah, it's clearly the opening. It's because it's just epic, iconic. I don't know. It, like, first, there's the like violent stabbing, and then head shoved through the skylight.
That really tears
itself,
it. Yeah.
I was blown. I was like, what a way to die. I thought she was dead, right? Like that's just a really like the mosaic with head sticking through the ceiling is such a visual, and then it collapses upon itself.
And
the cord wraps around her neck, and the red blood against the black and white checkerboard
Oh
tile.
my God, yes. How did we not mention that the first time? That looks fantastic.
Great. And then that like very artistic, ritualistic, stylized like shards of glass through the face and stuff of the what was the like landlord or whoever
Her friend that I literally had to deep dive the name for. I kid you not, because I was like, who the fuck? What is her name? I couldn't get it anywhere. But I will say too, I think Sarah's okay. We kind of mentioned it. There's no barbing on the wire, but I have to say the idea of that is super creepy, and the throat slit looks really good. I will say the throat slit was good. I have no complaints about that. I had complaints about the barbed wire minus the wire part, or
minus
the barb part.
Yeah,
the barb
like,
part, yeah.
Yeah, right.
That
right.
wasn't-
I mean, I get it. You're not going to stick an actress in the middle of barbed wire, but it definitely didn't take you out. All right, here's my last qualm with the movie. What the fuck was the deal with the money? Why do they care so much about who's getting paid and why?
I was trying to figure out, is that like a cultural thing, or are they kind of sussing her out? Because also there's a theory roaming about, but that's never really confirmed or not, if Olga, the one who she stayed with for like a hot minute, who had the nice apartment, is a part of that coven or not. Like, there's some debate, and I was like, well, I think you could really see it either way, that she's just kind of a dick, and that's just how she is. Or if she's kind of like sussing out Susie and putting her by this trial by fire kind of a thing. It is interesting, and I think it is interesting, too, because I wonder, they say, like, because Susie's like, well, I'm going to stay here. They get mad about it. If her strong-willed nature, maybe if she hadn't had that very American strong-willed nature, would she be a part of the coven? Would they just take from her? Would they just whatever? So it is kind of interesting that you could watch this film and kind of start sussing out the secondary characters and wondering like who's involved and who's not involved. That Mark, the guy that Susie kind of flirts with, I really had my suspicions on rewatching. I really can't figure out if he's just a guy who is kind of cutesy with her, or because he's in so tight with the coven, and because he is like really trying to get Susie if something's going on there.
He's the SS. Like,
exactly.
If you're going with this like fascist theme,
right.
it would make sense. Like, he's like the SS. And then also with the money, like who's willing to turn a blind eye and play ball, and if they're not, you get rid of them. And that's your educated population, your doctors and teachers,
your
right?
people who are different, quote unquote, aka blinds,
strong-willed, opinionated folks. Oh, right.
I think with a piano player, like I don't think that's
they murdered handicap for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like a happenstance. I feel like that's a very calculated thing to have him have a physical disability. I don't know for sure. I can't say that.
A room full of dancers at peak physical condition.
Which, by the way, can we say that's the most dick move ever, to take someone's walking stick and throw it on the ground? Like, you are a straight up monster. You're a fucking monster.
It was not good.
That was the worst. I was like, how could she do that? And also, I've said this already, but I cannot get over she was in The Third Man. She looks so different. She's so much more, I mean, she's a serious character in The Third Man, but she's so stunning and I just loved her in that. And then she's so harsh and scary with the giant smiley teeth in this that I seriously didn't realize it was the same actress, which I give her massive props for. That's fucking awesome. That, like, she's completely different vibes and still kills it. She intimidated the shit out of me in that movie. I didn't like it.
Well, so maybe my final question for you is Jessica Harper. How did she do?
So this is hard for me because I like Jessica Harper I loved her in The Phantom of the Paradise. She plays kind of a similar character in the sense that, like, she's the ingenue who's a little bit naive, who you do end up rooting for and is a protagonist of sorts. She's playing more the Christine Daae, Phantom of the Opera kind of a situation in that, but they're not entirely different characters. And I think they had seen Phantom of the Paradise first, so I could see where that character then was modeled off of this. She's strong-willed. She is, obviously she's the American, so she's the person we can connect with the easiest in that situation culturally and all the things. She's very, very pretty. She's very easy to watch in this film. I don't think they gave her a huge challenge per se in terms of acting. I think she gives what she gave. That's kind of the vibe that I have from it. But I enjoyed her a lot. Is she going down as my top tier final girl? No, absolutely not. There's too many good final girls, but also we're really spoiled these days in how our final girls react and handle situations that there should be some leeway. But also, Laurie Strode was around this time, and she's so much fucking cooler, obviously, whatever. We're not going to talk about it.
All right.
But you know what I mean. You know where I'm going with this.
But there were some serious limitations with this. One, because there is no background or character arc, there's no reason to love her.
No, she's just our easiest accessible person.
Yeah. And then second, in terms of all the actors, the limitation of planning to dub the entire movie, and the fact that actors and actresses were working with other actors and actresses
that didn't understand each other,
different languages.
Yeah, that's unhinged.
What a wild choice that did not work, in my opinion. And anyway,
I can agree with you there. I don't think that's her fault, but yeah.
No, that's my point. Is like, there's stories of like, people like building sets in the middle of scenes because they're like, it's all going to get dubbed over anyways. We don't care about the sound. And you're, as an actor, trying to stay in the moment and like, what
that's
a nightmare.
bad. I don't think that was a good.
And the person sitting across from you is speaking a different language. You're supposed to like
react appropriately. Yeah, I do agree. I think it's clear her easiest conversations are the ones where it obviously is English on English. I think you're right. Like, I think you can tell when it's English on English.
Well, and also the lips line up, but it's like. So,
but she can react better. No, that's a very, very valid point to bring up. I don't know. I don't really understand still what the thought process behind that was. I mean, I think it's cool in a sense.
Imagine doing that today in America.
Oh, never,
you hire
never.
Like some Italian and he's just gonna act with like speaking his lines in Italian, and then you hire some dude from Spain and he's gonna speak all of his lines in Spanish. Like, what a choice. What a crazy choice.
It wasn't. No, you're right. I mean, here's at the end of the day, there are very many valid criticisms, a lot of it being product of the time, a lot of it being choices by production on what they thought weren't going to work. Like you said, there's an issue with moving it to an older age group that some of that still feels very childlike, which I get is kind of the atmosphere they're going for. For me, it works, but I do understand the criticisms of it. It is not necessarily the best idea, in my opinion, to have everybody just speaking their national language and hoping that we can all just kind of work off of each other via just what we're putting out facially. I don't know. But aside from the issues it clearly has, I still think this is such a top tier. This is absolutely giallo cinema. It one of its best, no doubt. Stunning to look at, stunning soundtrack, and you're not going to get that until you actually watch it. I have heard this over and over. I was like, man, whatever. And then I saw it and went, yes, everybody is correct. So I still feel like this one deserves its place in the history of cinema. I still feel like it's a great film. For me personally, it is going to rank higher than the new one. But also, this is hard because you just watched the new one, and I haven't seen the new one in a good 5-7 years. So it's been a minute. I watched it when it first came out. It has been that long since I've seen it. So you might have a different opinion, but what's your kind of takeaways and maybe your comparisons why you like the new one maybe a bit better than I do?
Well, I think I agree with everything you're saying. I think if you are a filmmaker, go watch this original. There's so many interesting things at play that you have to take note of. If you're a film buff and want to see something unique and different, go watch it. If you're more of a casual viewer that wants to watch a really good movie, probably go watch the new one. Honestly, you're going to enjoy the original too. You know, like this was almost at times give me vibes of like Hellraiser in a way where it's so like off the wall and
otherworldly,
otherworldly,
weird designs.
Like, that you could almost like it's entertaining for those reasons alone. If you don't necessarily care about like story excellence and excellence in dialogue and whatever, but
a full-on arc of a character.
Yeah, which isn't necessarily why I got into filmmaking either. So y'all, thanks again for tuning back in to another episode of Pod Under Your Bed. Super curious again for your thoughts on this original Suspiria, or if you got some thoughts on the latest Suspiria, we would love to cover it in the near future. So please send us that feedback. We love to get in conversations. That's why we do this. At the end of the day, we love the film.
Abso-freaking-lutely. And let us know too if you guys are ever interested in us doing some comparisons. We've covered some originals, we've covered some remakes at separate times, and we're kind of interested in maybe putting them together, so I'd be curious what you think too. But yeah,
2.0.
That's right. So I think we've got some fun stuff in the works in the future, but as CJ noted, coming up next we have, I don't want to call it a Christmas classic, but it is a Christmas horror film. So I can say that. And honestly, we've got some great winter themed films coming up after that, which we are super stoked to cover. We already, I think, said it, but we are doing The Shining. We cannot wait. And other awesome wintry flicks to get you in the mood, even if global warming is taking over the world and it's green outside for you and it should be snowing. We'll make it up on our podcast. It'll be fun.
We'll bring Christmas to you. All right. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you next time.
Bye.